The milk was still cold when I found it. That's the detail I remember most, not the anger, not even the shame, just the fact that the milk was still cold, sitting on a shelf in a garage that smells like motor oil and old paint cans, next to a box of Christmas lights we never got around to putting up last year. I had 6 bags. Eggs, bread, the good coffee, a rotisserie chicken I'd bought because it was on sale and I thought I'd make soup with the bones. I set them on the kitchen counter myself, the way I have for 40 years in one kitchen or another. And by the time I came back downstairs from putting my sweater away, every bag was gone. I found them in the garage, lined up against the wall like they didn't belong inside anymore. Like I didn't belong inside anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood in that garage in my good shoes and I looked at 6 bags of groceries sitting in the cold, and I said out loud to no one, "Well, isn't that something?" Then I picked up the chicken, because a chicken doesn't deserve to suffer for anyone's bad manners, and I carried it back inside myself. That's when I started making calls. My name is Grace. I'm 68 years old, and until 3 years ago, I sold real estate in this town for 31 years. I know how paper works. I know how houses work. And on that particular Tuesday, standing in my own garage holding a warm chicken like a football, I made a decision that I want to walk you through from the beginning because context matters. A woman doesn't wake up calm and decide to sell the roof over 4 people's heads. She gets there one small insult at a time. My husband Walter and I bought this house in 1988. Paid it off in 11 years because he worked doubles at the plant and I sold houses on weekends when other agents wanted their Sundays off. We raised our son Daniel in that house. Walter passed 6 years ago. His heart, quick, no long goodbye, which I used to think was a mercy and some days still do. After he was gone, the house felt too big and too quiet, and when Daniel and his wife Vanessa asked if they could move in just for a year just to save up, with my granddaughter Lily on the way, I said yes before he finished the sentence. That was 4 years ago. Tuesday came gray and steady, the kind of light that makes everything look a little tired. That was the day of the garage. But if I'm honest with you, the garage wasn't the first thing. It was just the thing I finally let myself notice. The Christmas of 2021, I remember Vanessa redecorating the mantel while I was still hanging my own stocking, and when I asked where mine had gone, she said without looking up, "I thought we'd do something more cohesive this year." My stocking went in a drawer. It's still there. The summer of 2022, I offered to pay for Lily's dance recital costume, and Vanessa told me in front of Daniel that they didn't need that kind of help. The same week I heard her ask Daniel if his mother was ever going to get her own place for real this time. Daniel didn't answer her. He just went quiet the way he does. That's Daniel's whole personality some days, quiet, and hoping the quiet fixes things on its own. Spring of last year, I came home from my Thursday walking group to find my reading chair, Walter's chair, really the good leather one, moved out to the porch because it didn't match the new rug. It sat out there through 2 rainstorms before Daniel finally brought it back in, apologizing with his eyes but not with his mouth. And then there was the day I overheard Vanessa on the phone with her sister laughing, saying, she still thinks this is her house, like it was a joke between them. Like 31 years of selling other people's houses so I could keep this one hadn't happened at all. Each time I told myself the same thing. She's young. She's stressed. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. I have said, she didn't mean it so many times in 4 years that the phrase stopped meaning anything at all. That wasn't even the worst thing the two of them were hiding from me. Not by a long way. But I didn't know that yet. That Tuesday, all I knew was 6 bags of groceries and a cold garage floor. I want to tell you something about the kind of woman I am, because it matters for what comes next. I don't slam doors. I have never once raised my voice in that house, not at Walter in 40 years of marriage, not at Daniel growing up, not at Vanessa in 4 years of watching my home rearrange itself around her preferences like I was a guest who'd overstayed a weekend visit. I was a school secretary for 11 years before I got my real estate license, and if there's one thing that job teaches you, it's how to smile at people who are being unreasonable, while you quietly write down exactly what they said. I'm not angry. I'm simply done. I said that to myself in the garage holding that chicken, and I meant it in a way I hadn't meant anything in years. So I made the soup. I served it that night at the table, same as always, and I asked Vanessa pleasantly why the groceries had ended up in the garage. The fridge was full, she said. I didn't think it was a big deal. It's a big deal to me, I said. For words. No more. She looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at his soup, and I understood in that silence exactly how much room I had left in my own kitchen. I didn't say another word about it that night. I did the dishes same as always, dried them same as always, and went up to my room, and I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time before I picked up my phone. I called my friend Carol first. Not because I needed advice, I've closed hundreds of deals, I don't need advice, but because some decisions need to be said out loud to another human being before they become real. Carol, I said, I think I'm going to sell the house. She didn't gasp. She didn't tell me to think it over. She just said, it's about time, Grace. And something in me unclenched that had been clenched for 4 years. 2 weeks after the groceries, I was in the hallway outside Lily's room, folding towels I'd carried up from the dryer, when I heard Vanessa's voice through the vent that runs down into the kitchen. Old houses have vents like that. Walter used to joke you could hear a pin drop from the basement to the attic if the furnace was off. The furnace was off. She's not going to live forever, Vanessa was saying. And when she's gone, this house is Daniel's anyway. So why are we tiptoeing around her like she's already a guest in it? I stood very still, a towel half folded in my hands. We're not tiptoeing, Daniel said, quiet the way he gets. You are. You always do. Look, all I'm saying is, once we get her to sign the house over, for tax reasons, for her own good, so it's not tied up in some estate mess later, it's simpler for everyone. Your mother doesn't need to own a 4-bedroom house at her age. She needs to be somewhere with people to check on her. I didn't move. I didn't breathe the way you breathe when you're trying to be quiet on purpose. She's sharper than both of us, Daniel said, which was the kindest thing he'd said about me in longer than I wanted to admit. But it wasn't a no. It was never quite a no with Daniel. I already talked to a guy at the bank, Vanessa said. There's a form. It's basically just adding our names. It's not a big thing. It's not a big thing. She said that about the groceries too. I set the towels down on the hallway floor very slowly, the way you set down something that might break if you drop it from even a small height. And I went to my room and I closed the door, and for the first time since Walter died, I let myself cry. Not loud, not long, just enough to get it out of my system so it wouldn't leak into my voice later. Because I already knew I was going to need a very steady voice. They wanted my name off a house I paid for with 31 years of open houses and Sunday showings and Walter's overtime. They wanted it quietly on a form so it would look like generosity instead of what it actually was. That wasn't even the worst thing the debt of this whole arrangement was tied to. I just didn't know yet how deep it went. If you've ever stood in a hallway and heard the people you love talk about you like you're already gone, you know exactly the kind of cold that settles into your chest. Doesn't feel like anger at first. Feels like arithmetic. Stay with me because this is where it turns. The next morning I made coffee same as always, said good morning same as always, and drove to the bank the second it opened. I want to explain something because it matters. When Walter and I bought that house, we titled it in my name alone. His idea, actually. He'd seen enough at the plant, enough coworkers whose finances got tangled up in bad advice, to want at least one thing in the family locked down clean and simple. If anything ever happens to me, he used to say, I want you to never have to ask anyone's permission for anything. I used to think it was a strange thing to say to a woman who could outnegotiate half the agents in this county. Now I understood it was the most important thing he ever gave me. The deed was mine. Solely. Free and clear, paid off 9 years before he died. No mortgage, no lien, no co-owner, no fine print. Vanessa's form wasn't going to add her name to anything. It was going to take my name off of everything, and I hadn't signed a single piece of it. That evening, after everyone was asleep, I went down to the basement and pulled the metal file box out from under Walter's old workbench. The one Daniel thinks is full of tax returns and warranty cards, because that's what I've always let him believe. Underneath the warranty cards is the deed. Underneath the deed is a folder of my own. 31 years of closings and comps and market knowledge that never expired just because I stopped renewing my license for fun. And underneath that folder was a small envelope with Walter's handwriting on the front. For when you need it. I hadn't opened it in 6 years. I'd been saving it, I think, without knowing what I was saving it for. Inside was a single page. Walter's handwriting, small and neat, the way he wrote everything. Gracie, if you're reading this, something's happened that made you need to hear from me again. Whatever it is, you already know what to do. You always did. Just don't let anybody make you feel small in a house you built with your own 2 hands. Love you past the end. W. I sat on the basement floor and read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it back into its envelope and I put it in my purse where it has stayed ever since, and I picked up my phone and called Carol's nephew Marcus, who's been a real estate attorney for going on 15 years and used to shadow me on closings when he was in law school. Grace, he said, when I told him what I'd overheard. I'm proud of you for calling before signing anything, not after. Clipped. Steady. Exactly the voice I needed. Tell me you haven't put your name on a single form. Not one. Good. Then legally, you don't need anyone's permission for what you're about to do. You need mine for the paperwork and you need a realtor who won't talk. Do you know one? I laughed for the first time in 2 weeks. Marcus. I was that realtor for 31 years. The next morning, I called my old broker, Denise, who I trained myself back in 1997 and who owed me more favors than either of us could count. I want to list the house, I told her. Quietly. No sign in the yard yet. I want it ready to go the second I say go. Whose house? She asked, even though she already knew the answer. Mine, I said. It's always been mine. We met at her office 2 days later. She walked the comps with me. Houses 2 streets over going for more than I expected. This being a good year for sellers in our part of town. We talked staging, and I told her I didn't need staging advice from a 30-year-old with a clipboard. I'd staged houses before her parents met. She laughed and said some things never change, and for a moment it felt like the version of me from before Walter died, the version who walked into any room and knew exactly what she was worth. That was the version I needed back. 2 weeks after the vent, 2 weeks after the letter, the listing went live on a Thursday morning while Daniel and Vanessa were both at work and Lily was at school. I didn't put a sign in the yard. Not yet. Denise agreed that was smart. No reason to embarrass the family before the family had a chance to embarrass themselves first. But the listing was public. Photos, price, square footage, all of it. My real estate photographer friend Tomas came through while everyone was out and shot the whole house in 90 minutes flat. The way we used to do it in the old days, quick and clean and no wasted time. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, my phone had started to ring. Daniel at 4:12. I let it go. Daniel at 4:20. I let it go. Vanessa at 4:31, a text. Someone just sent me our house on Zillow? Is this a joke? Daniel at 4:45, voicemail. Mom, call me back. This is obviously some kind of mistake. Somebody must have hacked the listing site or something. Just call me. Vanessa at 5:02, another text. No punctuation this time. Grace, this isn't funny. Daniel at 5:15, voicemail, his voice tighter now. Mom, please, call me. Vanessa at 5:30, calling directly, straight to voicemail because I turned my ringer off an hour before. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, watching the notifications climb like a slow tide coming in. Daniel at 5:47. Mom, I talked to the neighbor. She said the photographer was here today. What is going on? Is something wrong? Are you okay? Please just call me back. That one almost got me. Almost. But I thought about the vent and the form at the bank and I thought no. Not yet. Let them sit in it a little longer. Let them feel, for one evening, the way I felt standing in a cold garage holding a chicken. Daniel's sister-in-law, Vanessa's own sister, who I'd always liked more than I probably should have, texted me directly at 6:10. Grace, I don't know what's happening, but Vanessa is losing her mind over here. Everything okay? I texted back one line. Everything is finally okay. By 7, Daniel was outside my bedroom door. I could hear him on the other side, not knocking yet, just breathing, the way he used to stand outside my door as a teenager, working up the nerve to tell me he'd wrecked the car. 14 missed calls between the two of them by then. 6 voicemails. A string of texts that went from confused to panic to, by the end, something close to pleading. I let it all sit overnight. In the morning I made coffee, same as always, and I told them both calmly, over breakfast, that we needed to talk that evening. After Lily was at her friend's house for a sleepover I'd arranged myself quietly the week before. That gave them all day to marinate in it. I'm not proud of that. I'm also not sorry. By the time evening came, Daniel had gone from panic to something more raw, and Vanessa had gone from outrage to something closer to frightened, which I understood because fear is what you feel when the ground you assumed was permanent turns out to have been rented the whole time. We sat in the living room. Not the kitchen was still, in some small way, contested territory, And I wanted this conversation to happen somewhere with no ambiguity about whose walls we were sitting inside. "Mom, please just tell us what's going on," Daniel said. His voice cracked on the word please, and some old tired part of me wanted to fold immediately, the way I always had. I didn't fold. "How much rent have you paid me in 4 years?" I asked instead. He blinked. "What? How much rent?" I said again. "Have you paid me in 4 years to live in this house?" Vanessa's mouth opened first. "We help with groceries, we help with." "I didn't ask what you helped with," I said. "I asked how much rent." Silence. The kind of silence that answers a question all by itself. "I heard you," I said to Vanessa, but really to both of them. "Through the vent. 2 weeks ago. I heard you say I wasn't going to live forever, and that this house was Daniel's anyway, and that there was a form at the bank that would make it simpler for everyone if I just signed my own house away for, and I'm quoting you, tax reasons." Vanessa went pale in a way that told me she hadn't rehearsed a response to this particular sentence. "Grace, that came out wrong, that's not what I meant. You called it a form for tax reasons before you'd said one word to me about it," I said. "That's not planning ahead. That's planning around me." Daniel had his head in his hands. "Mom, I should have said something, I should have stopped that conversation, I hate conflict, you know I hate." "I know," I said, and for a moment my voice softened because underneath everything, he is still my son, and watching him fold in on himself in shame is not something that brings me any comfort, revenge fantasy or not. "I've always known that about you, Daniel. It's why I let this go on as long as it did." "So what happens now?" Vanessa asked. Her voice had lost its edge entirely. Are you seriously selling the house out from under us? Where are we supposed to go?" "The same place I was supposed to go, apparently," I said. "When you decided I wasn't going to live forever and started planning for the after. Except I'm giving you 60 days. Which is more notice than event gave me." I want to tell you, I felt no thunderclap of triumph in that moment. I felt something quieter. Something that felt, more than anything, like relief. The specific relief of finally saying a true thing out loud in a room where it had been sitting silent and heavy for far too long. "There's one more thing," I said, and I watched them both brace for it. "Lily stays in my life. Whatever happens between the two of you and me, that does not change. I've already spoken to a financial advisor about a small trust for her, for school, for whatever she needs down the road. That part isn't a negotiation. That part isn't about either of you at all." Vanessa started crying then, and I want to be honest with you, it wasn't the kind of crying that made me feel powerful. It was the kind that reminded me she was young and scared and had married into a family with a mother-in-law who still knew exactly how paper worked, and that combination probably felt, from where she was sitting, like losing. "I never wanted to push you out," she said, quieter now. I got scared. About money, about the future, about Daniel and me never having anything that felt like ours. And instead of talking to you like a person, I just started planning like I was already gone." I finished for her. She nodded and didn't argue. "The apology should have come before the plan," I said. "Not after you got caught. Apologies in the wrong order aren't apologies. They're negotiations." I let that sit a moment. This wasn't a negotiation. This was information I already had. Daniel reached over and took my hand. The first time he'd touched me in weeks that wasn't accidental. Brushing past each other in a hallway that no longer felt like it needed to hold 3 adults pretending to share it evenly. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said. "For all of it. The chair. The stocking. The groceries. I saw it happening and I let it happen because it was easier than telling my wife no." "I know," I said again. And I meant it as forgiveness, even though it didn't erase 60 days on a calendar, or a listing already live on 3 real estate sites, or a deed that was mine before any of this started and would remain mine until the day I decided otherwise. The house sold in 11 days. Faster than I expected, even at my age, even knowing this market as well as I do. A young couple expecting their first child, who cried actual tears of joy walking through the kitchen. The same kitchen where Groceries had once been quietly exiled to a cold garage. There's a symmetry in that I didn't plan but appreciated all the same. I didn't leave Daniel and Vanessa with nothing. I want to be clear about that, because I'm not interested in being the villain of somebody else's story just because I stopped being the doormat of my own. I used part of the proceeds to help them with a down payment on a small place of their own. A place with their names on the deed together, this time honestly from the start. No vents required. I kept enough for myself to buy a smaller house 2 streets from Carol, 1 story, no stairs, a porch that gets the morning sun the way Walter always said a porch should. I put Walter's chair, the one that spent 2 rainstorms exiled outside, in the exact center of that new porch, where nobody will ever move it again without asking me first. Lily comes over on Sundays. We bake badly on purpose because she says my burnt cookies are funnier than the good ones, and I have decided that is the highest compliment a 9-year-old can pay a grandmother. Daniel comes with her most weeks now, sits at my new kitchen table, and doesn't go quiet the way he used to. Vanessa and I are not close, not yet, maybe not ever in the way some families manage it. But she sends a Christmas card now with her own signature on it, not just Daniel's, and last month she asked my advice about a house they're thinking of buying next. Asked it plainly without an angle, the way you ask someone whose expertise you finally decided to respect. I keep Walter's letter in the drawer of my new nightstand, not because I need to reread it anymore, but because some things belong close by, the way a compass belongs in a pocket even after you already know the way home. People ask me sometimes if I regret how far I let it go before I acted. 4 years of small disrespects piling up like unopened mail. I tell them the truth. I don't regret the waiting. I regret only that it took a garage full of cold groceries to remind me that patience and permission are not the same thing, and that a woman can be endlessly kind without ever agreeing to disappear. If there's one thing I'd want any of you listening to take from this, it's simple. You are allowed to be generous. You are not required to be invisible. And the moment somebody starts planning your life around the assumption that you won't notice, that's the moment to start quietly, calmly, making a few calls of your own. I wrote one line in my notebook the night the sale closed, the same notebook I've kept since Walter died, and I'll leave you with it because it's the truest thing I know, that being underestimated is not a wound. It is, if you let it be, an advantage nobody sees coming until the paperwork is already signed. And that night in my new house in Walter's chair, on a porch that belongs to no one but me, I finally slept the way a woman sleeps when she has stopped waiting for anyone else's permission to be exactly who she's always been.